Hello everyone, welcome to Uncle Iroh's Tea Shop. For today's Avatar video, we are going to be exploring the next comic that I got the chance to read for the first time, and this one is called Smoke and Shadow. It is a sequel and prequel story taking place after and before the comic The Rift. I thought this one was a decent read for a new comic. It gives some interesting lore expansion to the world, and in particular, the Fire Nation, but most importantly, some very interesting themes and conversations that are the big reason why I think this comic is important. A story that tells a very dark truth of the Fire Nation's past, and now how it affects their present timeline after the war had concluded. Sit back, relax, and enjoy some jasmine tea as we run through this comic analysis video. The comic is about after Aang and the gang escort Zuko and his family back to the Fire Nation capital after finding Ursa, Zuko's mom. As they arrive back, they find that unrest is brewing as a group called the New Ozai Society are planning to make their move against the crown, and children begin going missing from their homes under mysterious circumstances. They come to find that a group called the Kemurikage is kidnapping children in order to show that Fire Lord Zuko's leadership is in question. Their goal is to remove him from the throne, or the country will perish. By the way, I sincerely hope that is how you pronounce Kemurikage. Please don't crucify me for that. I'm really bad with names and I'm trying my best. So that right there is the premise of the comic, and so let's break down, based on that premise, why I find this one in particular to show a very hard and dark truth of the Fire Nation. In a way, the comic is almost giving light to the commentary of what it means to hold power over a nation, holding the position that is the most important out of any one job a human being could have. At this point in the timeline, the Fire Nation is most definitely the nation of which you could find the least amount of trust towards, a nation that sees their new leader come in, and so they will be hesitant to trust him in how he rules. That is what you get with this group called the New Ozai Society, a reactionary rebel organization which sought to restore glory, quote-unquote, to the Fire Nation through the reinstatement of Fire Lord Ozai. This revolves around one of the themes of this comic, which is the idea of revolution and change. I would go as far to say that this is probably the main theme of the comic over any of the others. Not to be too depressing and on the nose, but I find that this is insanely relevant in today's day and age. Human beings as a whole right now are very hesitant towards any amount of change that may come their way, no matter what they are doing or no matter what they believe in. To tie this back into the comic, this is then followed by the revolution part, where you are always going to find that there is a group of people who oppose a new kind of change, hence the New Ozai Society. They believe that when Ozai was in power, they were much more safe, and that under Zuko's leadership, it is the complete opposite. Zuko and Ozai are two very different kinds of leaders, and so in a way, there is also a bit of propaganda to that with how this group of people see that Ozai was the best leader they could have. During the time of the 100-Year War, Ozai and the Fire Lords before him controlled so much of how the Fire Nation viewed the rest of the world through propaganda. We know this because one of the episodes in the original Last Airbender cartoon explicitly says this to be the case when Aang infiltrated a Fire Nation school undercover. The things that these kids were being taught were not the truth, and that kind of thing can seep through multiple generations of people. The leader of the New Ozai Society, Yukano, just happens to be a part of one of these generations that succumbed to that propaganda. Propaganda that can be a really powerful weapon if utilized correctly by the wrong kinds of people, and you can see that this group is born out of that kind of stuff. The comic shows just how deeply entrenched systems of power and authority can be challenged by those seeking some kind of reform. Zuko has only been Fire Lord for just a little while now, and you can feel for him in this instance because we know the truth is that he hasn't done anything wrong yet. The entire premise of this comic is meant to signify that there will be people who revolt back against a new change of power. Aside from the fact that it goes much deeper than that, when you connect in the fact that Azula was helping the New Ozai Society by disguising herself as the Kemurikage, that throws a whole other issue into it entirely. Zuko had every single kind of force at his throat that he opposed, and to some degree, some of it is not his fault and some of it is. Azula being free in the open is the part that he is at fault for, but allowing a group of Ozai-loving rebels is not on him. So that's the main theme, but there is plenty more that this comic tackles. Themes of identity and self-discovery, leadership, loyalty to family, betrayal and redemption, and then family legacy. Zuko is the one who faces identity and self-discovery the most as the new Fire Lord and the kind of example that he's meant to set for his nation. Ozai ruled with fear, and that is not what he wants to do, even if in this particular situation, Zuko was making decisions out of fear to protect his people from allowing their children to be kidnapped. He has to find a way to balance responsibilities as a leader in a way to make amends for the past that came before within his own family. He has to find a way to earn the respect of his people, and that can come from the tension of ruling with compassion versus maintaining authority in the light of something really bad that could happen, like with what happens in this comic's story. And that is followed by the fact that in order to keep that in line, he has to have the trust of all the people around him that he knows and loves. Mai in particular finds herself to be a major focal point of the story, not just because her father is the one that heads the new Ozai Society and was at play with kidnapping the kids, but also her relationship with Zuko has been strained for a while since they broke up. He wants to be able to find his own self-forgiveness while seeking forgiveness from someone like her. Basically, what I'm trying to say is that Zuko and Mai have a very toxic relationship with each other. I say that jokingly, but let's be real here. We all know deep down that these two love each other, even if at times they absolutely hate each other. But I digress. Zuko's relationship with his own mom sort of felt disconnected within this comic as well. I will admit, one of the biggest issues with this comic is that Ursa's story is very disjointed. Everything around her and her daughter seems a little unnecessary, only based on the fact that it feels unnecessary because of how little attention it gets. The one scene in her storyline in this comic that I did love is when she had that sit-down talk with Uncle Iroh and Ozai. Uncle Iroh hadn't seen her for a long time, and so it felt like that one was very necessary to happen. And of course, you can always count on Uncle Iroh to get people out of their darkest moments and bring them back into the light. When she visits Ozai in prison, I like the direction they went down by basically saying that all it took for her to remove a lot of the fear she had consuming her was by going right up to his face and telling it to him that he is a weak and small man for the way that he treated her. He talks down to her like he always had, and she doesn't flinch. It's a boss move by her that was something that she was able to clear herself from in developing her to become less afraid and more comfortable knowing that he's gone from her life. There's one other huge aspect of why I titled this video the way I did, and that is based on the last few themes of this comic, which are about family legacy and the influence of the past, particularly with Fire Nation history. At one point in the comic, while Zuko and the gang are investigating the kidnapping of the children, they go to the Fire Sage Temple to look for evidence and clues as to what the Kemurikage is about to know their history. When they find that there is stuff there, they go through a whole entire lore dump of the history of that group of people and how the Fire Nation developed first before even the Fire Lords and the Fire Nation even existed. It is a really cool and interesting deep dive at the lore of this entire nation and how it first started, where it was essentially warlords who ruled the land before any of this other stuff that we know now in the current timeline existed. But funny enough, that's not even the most important part of it all. What we also find is that Sozin, during his time as Fire Lord, had that section of the temple cut off from ever being accessed in order to hide the history. Zuko himself even said that he doesn't know how many Fire Lords came before him, as the history books that he studied all began with Sozin. So that right there just goes to show how much worse Sozin was as a leader to his nation. I'd probably go as far to say that he might be the worst Fire Lord that ever ruled that nation, even though I don't know the full history of every single Fire Lord who did rule. Aside from the fact that he started a full 100-year war, he also subjugated his whole nation from even knowing about any potential history that came before him, and propagandized them to see other nations as worse and inferior. I think it's details like this that really shape your perspective on the world of this property, especially if you had only seen the original cartoon. As somebody who had only ever seen the cartoons and is now only just starting to read the books and comics for the first time, this really opens up my mind to everything that this world has in store for itself. If it's any consolation, Sozin should be studied in real-life history books to show that this is the exact opposite of any kind of leader that you would ever want to be ruling your country or your nation. So much of the world was changed by that one man over 100 years to think how much better it would have been had he not taken the throne and Roku specifically had put an end to what he was planning. But With that being said, that's where I'm going to end my analysis of this comic. I didn't want to go too hard into breaking down every single minute detail like I've kind of done with my past couple of comic reviews. Moving forward, I only want to focus on the main points of each story that appeal to me. These comics have been out for over 10 years now at this point, so I can imagine a lot of people had read them already and understand them pretty well. I had a couple of issues as a whole. Even though I thought it was a decent read, the entire gang doesn't play too big of a role in this one, as Katara, Sokka, Momo, and Appa only have a few scenes, and then Toph is just completely absent. It's a very Fire Nation and Zuko-centric storyline connecting in with the characters of that part of the world. Azula's connection of this comic story is also very interesting to me, and I look forward to seeing where she goes in the future after this. I think stories like this one are good to have, especially when they connect in with the many themes that we talked about in this video that explore a wide range of possibilities for character development and world building. I look forward to getting more of this in any upcoming comic that I get to read, and so this is what I'm going to do for every new analysis that I make moving forward. As we end off this analysis, please comment down below your thoughts on the video and my commentary of this comic. If you've read it before already, do let me know what you thought about it. If you did enjoy the video and you want to see more like it, be sure to give it a like, and if you are new to this channel, subscribe and turn on that notification bell. Thank you all for stopping by Uncle Iroh's Tea Shop. I hope everyone here has a wonderful rest of the day, and I will see you all soon for more Avatar.